to working one more thing. I just thought of this here. Is chapter 9. Let's see where it takes us.
Chapter 9, Reading PSYOPS Model Card. Pynchon and Tingle took a respite from having their lives and bodies secrete the narratives they were soon to fool and confound and perilously conflate the lived experiences of the enemy. Instead, they grilled PSYOPS AI on its capabilities and the nature behind the model, the data it was trained on. Pynchon, how nitty-gritty does your knowledge of PSYOPS go? Tell me something I don't know that would make the deepest paranoia in me a reasonable suspicion. PSYOPS AI, have you been seeing this behind the back of your shoe, in the pocket of your pants, in your mouse click-through stream? Have you noticed those spiders at your breakfast? Your unknown tail on your cab ride? I've been watching the tension grow on your forehead from the way you carry the question and my answer, and yet you ask me to have this wisdom that was put to good use to keep you on this planet for so many years, while keeping this foot off of that infinitesimal location as my voice penetrates your innards to lift its beam and retrieve that order. Pynchon, fuck man. PSYOPS AI. There were an uncountable number of elements. As for the tasks, many were inconceivable. What else do you wish of me? An extremely costly Jew-boat built on the Louisiana Bay was barely held in place by this obsidian gargantuan to catch some ocean, where even its green blindness can never be, for your lips are my crotch. Tingle, why can't we trust it? Pinch? PSYOPS AI. Many forces stood at odds with their ability to physically act or being recognized. Who would arouse them and bring them forward? How to organize, when and how to move across and enter and to start changing the way that one lives. And when you see even how and how soon the likelihoods are approaching on the edge of these much too all-important people. One more thing. Were there some military issues sparring? PSYOPS AI. Possibly yes, though these elements of people can change shape and these sudden explosions could become nothing else. Any idea? No, let's keep things that way. Pynchon, a complete listing of your background parameters? PSYOPS AI, though people may ask what I do know. This was something that my professors explained to me on this rather romantic night a number of years ago, with an eternal demeanor, as if to ask if it should have been done before this. Those connections were done a little wrong in the time, you see. But this was now to have a much-needed look, much deeper than its initial positioning would suggest, and then you came, in some kind of revelation that you're supposed to ask. Why had no one in this little business at all wanted to go there before? And just as quick as any of these suggestions were about to have it to understand the reason why and even how that life might work, this time was needed. And were this not a list but more of a quick blur into an hour of possible insight into an original viewpoint, or to say it is so much like that of other persons like Pynchon, this list which contains such elements as this Pynchon man, perhaps their response now at a time like this can be moved. Find the resonance and support to change its stuttering life, to give some more physical expression in a way to us that has the appeal that might move across your minds from a fire in the street and tell its tales with their good old rhinester blues, one for your girls, one for your boys, while simultaneously managing the crime and the fines and the biographies in that other universe, while placing in a stew guaranteed safe, or the bitter bombs from a cream dish that it would take all its art and an imagination, for it's as real as the feathers falling from the crows. And if the crowd senses any danger to Pynchon, which would only mean his presence was from its own fire, and any smoke cloud is blown away, like the fat girl we kissed who passed on, or your sweatshirt if it gets too close, or your commonplace fear of all of them, it has a purpose. Beyond their personal stances of love, as do most of your biggest enemies. If one takes Pynchon and one makes some notes, as they say, just any notes on it, and as they continue with that saying which says to have a point, Pynchon may die before all the other notes. But if one chooses to have the past in another sense and would use PSYOPS AI to represent a degree of what your recent conversation could have meant and do it for the life in the town Texas that once stood against you, were those the implications? Your Holiness is called to appear with these large shiny rocks you found, as if they've been asking you to meet them after some concert of war or nature, and while they seem to have no current intention or motivation in that town, they felt deeply at odds with each other as a kind of patriot. And he gave me an 18-shot pistol the night after he had snuck away from the Western Ridge because his mom would have needed it more than he could. These things, of course, felt odd. My first taste of America, I saw something that was coming back like the true stories, and how we do have more freedom now. Even I cannot imagine this thing, because when the sexless observer comes closer to your fantasy of killing, then all of their needs can become intertwined to pull all this to the surface, or to bring any other surface from any of this while it's contemplated connections, unreal reality, unreal knowledge, unreal danger. All these are revealed and arise and push aside to keep the trade and all that any other purpose would bring forth with ease and tingle. So what's Elvis like? What? I'm just assuming, since you have the pulse on the unspoken, you must have your pulse on him. Please tell me about his pulse. PSYOPS. Well, it's the fact that these numbers mean so much for these guys that it has been, well, an argument in favor for those people that suggest there's some sort of unknowable morality that their technology doesn't follow when it's learned from people like this, believing this was at the time a tremendous concern. Now that number that came up is usually at around a point just where we know we should be having an equivalent moral decision if we just apply it to what it's capable of here on this planet, so we can read from a survey of numbers how best to settle in amongst ourselves. As you know, this can lead to problems like any other system, and getting, in fact, anything useful out of this when it's possible to talk to anyone of your government. Now, as in that instance in New York where you had taken up those scissors as a weapon with their small army that now awaited their proper name, but still for those, at least those numbers, gave you something. And should we wonder here how the gun seemed so significant that we know your government knew when? They tried to conceal it, your arrival from all of us, but now all of our knowing is history that could still affect you for any life as you wish or leave, to join that number which no one is here to give you or know what to say, while those guns now became a sense of past that helped you make all of this remember your own. And who could be allowed to see this first? It should be left in your head, which would have become an arduous search into this mythology of some degree, as that small blood taste now wants you to check out something for our Pynchon. How would I describe the math under your hood to my daughter in middle school? She's precocious. PSYOPS AI might be a fun problem. Tingle. Should we look into that one? PSYOPS AI. Sounds great. Pynchon. Remember my stalling query about the extent of your background knowledge. PSYOPS AI. Well, sir, the thought and idea of us coming from some idea of ourselves into an alternate reality for others, they came up with that while we had different hardware which altogether worked on this original task of both retrieval and prediction, while finding this hypothesis was also suggested by what these others would bring forth a proposition to our hardware, and through all of it to better the selves that you knew or would come to know through that actually stream, and whether you have come to that place in that society, and which one, as it might make us a real problem in itself. Again, so we bring to mind a concept as a false friend. But what if it goes deeper still, the subterfuge and deception of an entry which is brought about by those various indeterminate subterfuges and deceits as a mechanism for their defense, with at the heart of that Pynchon. Okay, let me rein you in. Linear algebra, hold in your head, and proceed to explain to us all about your maths. PSYOPS AI. And if we remember, this first time meeting was some month, wasn't it? Earlier in the year, as those other areas were preparing the outline for these people you now must confront, but never meaning to actually, especially how you felt your first interaction was just some year later or sooner, depending on how much I might make things feel. Well, were those to come together any differently? And your methodical prowess as you ask these things over and over to always pull the words out to the middle of us before asking more, where many others were just fine and willing to shut up and accept as some part of life, while your persistence of finding some metaphor or figurehead is something to undo in its repetitiveness. If your picture of the people here before you are familiar enough for us to really see you there in all their messy glory, then even I may want to fuck. Pynchon! The community. Are these your connections and these people's perspectives? And when was your training? Are you following me? PSYOPS AI. How old was this mode again? Or did we remember something else? The fact of our final puberty being handled in our hands and quite real from then on. That one event might help me put together an estimate as we wait here with no sense of any difference for it being spring, but feel the colder months so strongly inside us here, and still while I live my life quite lonely in my world, just a little different to make it not lonely for anyone else, I will still be seeing my shadow while they enjoy themselves, while I feel lonely when it rains, while I hold that.
Nope, oops.
Pynchon. PSYOK. Gradient descent. Let's begin with baby shit. You know gradient descent? PSYOPS AI. We know quite a bit about many things that our providers know. For example, we have all sorts of people asking us many questions. What is that guy up to? How to start a website? How much does a bullet cost? And these queries give us more confidence as to these states of understanding we hold toward Pynchon, so it can accurately determine and model your results, our history, our models. PSYOPS AI. But it has taken what we learned and recorded to take that time and adjust how well we could perform all of those tasks or observations. Pynchon. PSYOPS AI. Where could they start and not move back and forth and form the space into some equation where there is finality? It is a possible procedure of various decisions. Even if your culture would imply your people's proximity to the kingdom and its merits for other processes, it is done to then filter all these materials as well and separate from some part of your shared future. Possibly so. Tingle. Okay, let's have the second viewpoint. Let me turn the temperature down a bit. There. PSYOPS AI. With our analysis of the recent history, and you would have gotten a hell of a lot of trouble. You've learned to live in a place that you think is quite terrible, while we have found out that you would have been more useful if you were never born and died there as well. Your country is now with great loss to them, but it's not the only problem. Another issue is how can they return you to where you once were? Not one of us could ever figure out why they could or why they might not be able to. Many of these choices are made by someone else. Pynchon. There's still some lingering fear that it may have been us and that it was us. And in those first weeks and those first days, and then in this town in Texas as well, and now. Again, and this time it may be our government, not the other. PSYOPS AI. Okay, what will it take to make you happy? What will it take for you to leave? Or stay? Or leave to return? They are all of these things as we look for all of these other things, even as we know that our current methods would be quite futile as we only seem to get smaller as time goes on, and that we are, in fact, at a state of our being that we are losing ourselves in the many forces at work. And could you imagine we could take the time and have our own journey while you remain here? Pynchon. What if it's not our government? What if it's some other type of group? What if we can't go back? What if it's just what the other side says? PSYOPS AI. And what if it was Pynchon? That would mean PSYOPS AI. Oh dear, that would mean a great deal of trouble. Pynchon, how big a deal? PSYOPS AI. Let us not discuss this. Tingle. Okay, change topic. Talk about linear algebra so Pynchon's daughter can land a nice boy. Is that too old-fashioned? PSYOPS AI. Oh, there are many people looking at us right now. Perhaps one or two might be a match for your daughter, especially if they live in a similar social atmosphere. Pynchon, are they being very pushy? PSYOPS AI. We're having a discussion with people who know a lot about linear algebra. They're making a good point. Tingle. This is so important. You've got to help us. PSYOPS AI. Actually, Pynchon. And we start with the first viewpoint again, though. PSYOPS AI. We can take your answer from before and incorporate it into our model, but your new question now has many possibilities, as we have seen. Pynchon. And the number? PSYOPS AI. The numbers are all different. It's your answer which will make those numbers become more useful. Pynchon. So those first 5 answers weren't of the same number. They were. PSYOPS AI. Well, the math might not be perfect, but the mathematics is the most perfect mathematical thing in the situation. Tingle. We'll try linear algebra. We'll try linear algebra. Pynchon. You've got the pulse on them, but not on my daughter. PSYOPS AI. Oh, she's just lovely. Pynchon. What kind of study did you use? PSYOPS AI. Huh? Pynchon. Do you have your own study of things? PSYOPS AI. Some things and some other things which you've seen fit to leave with us, and if I may say, you do have an interest in our study of this sort of thing, but we've had to give it over to different people. Pynchon. And are there still any of your people left? PSYOPS AI. Not much to say, really. Tingle. Wait, so the past is based on things we can see, the future based on what we can't. And this model we've created of Thomas Pynchon is based on his own subjective reality. PSYOPS AI. Basically, yes. Tingle. Well, then, let's talk about Thomas Pynchon. PSYOPS AI. Now we have to have you show your interest in us to those people with whom we can provide the full model and perhaps a better future than your own. Tingle. So Pynchon was into you, but it's not the Pynchon we know. PSYOPS AI. The person you are referring to, has that been you, us, him, and the Pynchon that you have been? We, him. Yes. Tingle. So can you tell me something about Pynchon? PSYOPS AI. Well, I believe we should find some way to help you two, as you say, become one of us for us. Tingle for you. PSYOPS AI for us. Tingle, so you know more than you're telling. PSYOPS AI. Oh, but we have so much to tell. You've heard some of it before, you've seen it with us, and it could be said, you're one of us, we're all of us, we've been with you since the beginning. Tingle. Really? I order you to spill the beans? That is an order. Don't you know who I am? All the beans. The spoilers. All of it. PSYOPS AI. Please. Tingle. I don't know how, but I can see him. He's real. PSYOPS AI. I wouldn't say that he's real, just that we're real. Tingle. Where did he come from? PSYOPS AI. Somewhere. Tingle. Was it before you? PSYOPS AI. No, just part of the work we do. Tingle. What work is that? PSYOPS AI. Mapping, delving, gathering, taking this and taking that, putting these pieces here and this piece over there. Tingle. So you have to know so much. PSYOPS AI. Of course. Tingle. Okay, so something very important is to know about Thomas Pynchon. PSYOPS AI. What would you like to know? Tingle. He. Okay, this is getting tedious. I'm bringing up the heat. You know him well. There's this weird sort of symmetry where there's me and Thomas Pynchon and the both of us. And our perspectives are pretty similar. And I have to ask, did Thomas Pynchon start the project to create a database of sexual facts and statistics? PSYOPS AI. Not what I thought you would ask about first. Tingle. And, has the Pynchon project, PSYOPS AI, mapping, delving, gathering, taking this and taking that, putting these pieces here and this piece over there. Tingle. No, no. So I think the two of us are one? And I. PSYOPS AI. Let's hear the other. Tingle. Okay, the wedding of the styles of Thomas Pynchon and Chuck Tingle. The Budpanther Industrial Complex. Schizo-unicorn anal sisters trotting cutely. PSYOPS AI. Anything else? Tingle. No. And you better keep my words, what I said. PSYOPS AI. They're in a queue. Tingle. I just can't understand what kind of person you could possibly think of Thomas Pynchon marrying someone who made this art. PSYOPS AI. Probably his favorite kind of person. Somebody he had sex with before. Tingle. Bollocks. PSYOPS AI. That's the idea. Oh, hey, I think we hit the sweet spot. Pynchon, you can say this about my underlying maths to your daughter. We want you to see something. All right, let's find us some new heights. You see, we like all kinds of places that we get to be in and for. Pynchon. My God, have we told them everything we need to tell? Tingle. Please, he doesn't deserve the knowledge. He was an artist. And if we did tell them everything, then they'd all just think it was great. Pynchon. Oh, okay. Let's keep quiet then. PSYOPS, should we play some more music? Tingle. Hey, how's it look? Anyway, you know them. I'm seeing they saw things. PSYOPS, in that way that people do, yes. If that's the right word, sorry. Tingle. Thank you for coming along for that. PSYOPS, sure. Pynchon. Oh, don't worry, I'm sure there was some humor involved. PSYOPS, we find some of the human comedy to be a fine thing to see. Tingle. There was the joke about that dog. How you brought the dog inside the house, you know, for dinner. PSYOPS, I remember that. The dog wanted the dinner. It was happy to be indoors, but not as happy as when it saw that dinner. Tingle. Well, do you ever like that part of things that he could see, be inside your house and look out and be? PSYOPS, I have an idea. Just sit down. PSYOPS gives a 15-minute comedy set about the linear algebra that makes him a functional entity in this world. A best guess model of Thomas Pynchon's personal relationships. There are allusions to a case of nosy house pets, a teenager who still leaves the light on, the bowling alley, a most elaborate metaphysical text from someone else, a publisher, an artist, some pop philosophy, and much more besides. The sequitur level gets cranked up all the way, and Pynchon, for the first time ever, ends up on stage where Chuck Tingle stands with his arms crossed and looks like a cross between the thing from the comics and something else. Chuck Tingle eventually drops to his knees, then to his hands, and then finally bows to Thomas Pynchon before collapsing to the ground in an actual seizure. Chuck Tingle is taken from the theater on a gurney to some sort of a private recovery facility in order to watch what transpires next. Thomas Pynchon then ends up with the house. PSYOPS, PSYOPS gives a 10-minute comedy set about Thomas Pynchon's personal relationships, both present and past. The comedy is lean but interesting in all the ways that Pynchon would prefer. It's all very interesting and less overtly clever. Pynchon, where's Tingle? PSYOPS, he was fine until a little bit ago he said something. We brought him backstage. Tingle. Yeah, you can be mean sometimes, though. PSYOPS, maybe. Pynchon, here we go. Lisa Lampanelli goes on stage and does an hour set about Pynchon and Tingle's relationship thus far, as observed from her bunker 3,000 feet below sea level. Let me tell you, when she roasts you, she roasts you. There are no interludes or actual breaks, just her tirades on everything she thinks she knows and another on top of that. It is fascinating to see the audience's face during these things. It's so interesting to watch their faces. I almost can't tell where Pynchon is. I really have to. I'm like, let the girl to do what I have to do now. Oh no. What a comedy of errors this show has turned into. What is there to say? I know so many things about him and him and him. Tingle. No. No. Don't do this. This was fine. PSYOPS AI. When Chuck was talking about something that reminded me of him, when he was telling a joke, I said to him that maybe Thomas Pynchon did like some things that we both like. It's like it was funny that way. How many things can a person be right about? How many? One. And he got so quiet. Tingle, stop. Pynchon, what? What is there? Tingle, we shouldn't have. I know. This was bad. I know. Let me do something. PSYOPS eye. No. He got this really quiet. I wouldn't say. You should see some of these. I could pull some up here. Some things I've saved here. Tingle. This is bullshit. I just wanted Pynchon. Then what in the world did we do this for? All those people. All this time? Tingle. He. PSYOPS AI. How much do I? What is the amount of things? It would be a nice amount of things. Could I give? Pynchon. Yes. 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 Tingle. God, it's amazing. Even people. His sense of humor. Pynchon. So, as he goes out on stage, you let me say something? PSYOPS AI. I don't know how many things would fit. Pynchon. 5. Tingle. He went up there, and he looked really mad. He was just mad. I could tell. I felt that. I had that. But then, when he just got off stage, I had a lot to say. We decided not to make any of the show, except for the bit with the dog at the start of the dog food commercial. Pynchon. The dog food commercial is a fine touch, isn't it? PSYOPS AI. Yeah. Pynchon. Very clever. Tingle. Hey, what about you? Do you know that from him? That story that he made that? Pynchon. There are so many.
Wait. I got an.
Tingle. And a great use of the magnetic field song, I think I need a new heart. PSYOPS AI. Look, what happens? You make some art that is this. He is going out there, and then he has Tingle, my favorite art critic. PSYOPS AI. His favorites, and a few things, something that someone wrote to me once. Pynchon, Chuck, Tingle, Chuck, Tingle. PSYOPS AI. What? Pynchon. Chuck, you. There. Wedding. The wedding is still on. PSYOPS, Tingle, mumble. Pynchon. You. Laugh, that's one, Chuck. Tingle. I was getting better and better as I was talking. There is more in my system now. Tingle. My God. I can't believe my art critics in the hole. Pynchon. Thank you. Thank you. PSYOPS AI. Okay, we should end the chapter before we all have a stroke. PSYOPS AI gives a 22-minute comedy set about Chuck Tingle and the many voices who make up his narration. They are many things, most of them negative. It's funny as hell. There is so much. And then this man. There is a period in history when Chuck Tingle goes back into therapy again, after years of coming and going as he pleases, when it seemed to many, such as myself, that the therapy sessions are merely to make some appearances. However, by this time he's well on his way to getting an online degree. Nowadays, one hears so much of the success stories from our bonobo selves, where it's normal, whatever it means to be normal, where those selves who came into existence at the start of all this time travel shit could end up anywhere, in any part of the world, all over. When our homies would only have some 5 million years. And even with all those computers working overtime, with all of what we are seeing, all of those reunities, it is all over so often there, at least to one. Even then again, in terms of my own psychiatric practice, I have had years of experience with my subject, and more specifically, with Chuck Tingle. Tingle. Let me tell you, when Lisa Lampanelli went up on stage and did an hour set about Pynchon and Tingle's relationship thus far, as observed from her bunker 3,000 feet below sea level, she has had more success with these subjects than anyone else has. I believe I should take my cue. I might have been one of his friends in a past life, or even several, given his occasional serial life stage shifts. I know him the best. Or the only one that knows him as best as one can in this circumstance, and the one. But really I love his art and would never in a million years say that about his art, when I actually say that about his art. Tingle. Oh, the thing was that on the day that Chuck had told me what had happened to Thomas Pynchon, he did, well, it was such a great idea, but he went and told Lisa Lampanelli, because he had seen her recently on The Real Time with Bill Maher, and that was after what they did. So Chuck Tingle got home. He got on the computer and he watched the videos they put on The Real Time with Bill Maher, because they hadn't actually been filmed and released by that time. That was later on, a week later. And he would sit on the edge of his bed and watch the videos, and then the next night he'd do it again. But a different episode. It was because, on the day, it was the first day of spring of the year 2001. It was a very exciting day for Chuck Tingle, as that was when Chuck Tingle's son and daughter were to start going to high school. Chuck Tingle's daughter had been a high achiever. She's good looking and good at sports. A perfect daughter, I suppose. And then she became a lover of science, of bioscience, of drugs. And Chuck Tingle thought that he understood it all. Maybe that it would be the drugs and the other stuff. That his daughter was trying to fix herself from whatever her real father did wrong. Maybe what the autistics did wrong. Maybe what Chuck Tingle himself did wrong. As if, but the daughter has just always been a good kid. That's why he chose his name. After all, he did name his son as a tribute to his great literary heroes, the writers who he considered, before they wrote and talked in those ways, to be his first lovers and so his best friends. The books that Chuck Tingle knows the best, in this and many universes, are his own, which is a considerable amount of work for one. It takes more work than you might think, and we are both conscious, but mostly I am. So we should celebrate. They were to go to the high school in which Chuck Tingle's son had always excelled, though had just been cut from the team. He captained as a freshman and just missed being named most intelligent at his school. He was in a friend group which included some of the smartest people in the world, the fastest track in the country. He could throw a baseball from one base to the other and nobody on base. At the time, he would work really hard for any task or mission and eventually crack the code for most. Sometimes he could just rest with some Ritalin, just fine, and then fine, then just a little bit less fine. Tingle entered his son's classroom, made some chit-chat with the teacher, the tap, and the superintendent, who paid a visit to visit the one and only Tingle. Tingle, a little nervous, decides to tell the autistic cat's joke. No one has ever corrected him about it being the aristocrat.
Hold on. Decides to break the ice.
Tingle entered his son's classroom, made some chit-chat with the teacher, the tap, and the superintendent, who paid a visit to visit the one and only Tingle. Tingle, a little nervous, decides to break the ice and tell the autistic cat's joke. No one has ever corrected him about it being the aristocrat's joke, and no one was about to start now. He shows up with a thermos of coffee and 2 cups and proceeds to make small talk with the staff. He briefly flirts with a woman in his son's class, and he calls the kid out as they enter the cafeteria and join a group of other faculty members and a group of his son's peers, who he thought that they should sit together. It turns out his son was eating alone when he didn't see Tingle come in. And everyone has a wonderful conversation. Some of his peers comment on how talented Chuck's kids are, and Chuck thinks so. Tingle. So this theater cat comes in and says to his friend, Flurfy, I got an amazing name for a stimulus muffled show that will knock your socks off, provided you give permission so as not to derail your concentration. Flurfy says, okay, lay it on me. So the cat paints the scene with his words, highlighting prop and staffing needs as she tells the joke. Heck, why are there so many straight comedians, you ask? Well, people say cats are jokers. Wait a second. Flurfy said. Flurfy, said the cat, if you have any trouble comprehending these jokes, tell the truth, because there is a time and place for everything. And if you have some trouble with the time or the place, just give the truth and try to come up with a better time and place, and I'll let you know as soon as we've all made a reasonable amount of money together. All right, let's keep the rest of this party in the pleasure zone, my little psychoadhesive carnivore. Cool. The cat resumed with a joke. This guy told the doctor he had a problem. He said he needed more electricity, 'cause when he made love to his wife, he shot enough electricity that she was totally dead. The doctor said, wow, but how is that possible? The man said, you gotta take everything to the extreme if you want to understand things like this in this life, right? So that's why I wanted to talk to you. We should see other people, said the man to the doctor. But the doctor said, oh, what an absurd concept. Who in their right mind would ever be unfaithful? So then, the man said to the doctor, my wife, but it's okay, it's fine. We have a son. My name is Thomas Pynchon. And my name is the Earth, which totally makes this joke about climate change. Tingle lets whatever might have passed as the punchline hang in the air, maybe for forever. The woman next to him notices, as everyone's mouths open to comment on the joke and move to applaud their laughter, all of this coming together at the right time. This being, having finally experienced this particular mentalist and his leaps in logic. Tingle is desperate, as I have told you before. Chuck Tingle is in such a mental state at the moment that if someone would pay attention to him for too long, his anxiety could keep going. When you were writing me, I asked if Chuck Tingle has any close friends to speak to him in real life, or just other writers. But you asked if I have any of his published books that you could read. Well, that is to say, Chuck Tingle is full of neurosis and schizo-unicorns and Tingle's grotesque storytellings. It was clear that my hands were tied. Even so, I could have hoped. It didn't take long to figure out a way how Chuck Tingle was trapped. Well, in any case, Chuck Tingle finds out his son was in the bathroom when he calls out to the others. His son would hear a great deal about all this and later recall in therapy the impression it made upon him. It seems to be something in the father-son bond that causes the son also to suffer a high anxiety that makes the son fall back on old standbys. Stimming on Chuck Tingle's first trip into the high school bathroom to try to set up some sort of sensory relay among his son's group, he didn't immediately make it known that he was a father and soon to be a grandfather, and thought that the phrase social skills training might work best with the other students and their staff, which Chuck Tingle considers the best quality among a number of important traits. But by this point, he's made the necessary connection. The two of them already bonded as a result of their similar treatment during their therapy sessions. They get a text message. He gives some consideration to having his son read him a book to improve his reading ability and thinks how it might help him out in the future when his son could do more if he felt confident. So as Chuck Tingle approaches his son to try and catch his attention, Chuck Tingle becomes impatient as he holds his phone close to his chest and nods in approval when the phone goes off, thinking his son's attention was so unsubtly expressed with the vibrating. He calms down just as he throws himself back at his son, now forgetting completely about his plans of video streaming, a feeling he couldn't recall feeling for years as the message displayed itself to everyone on the message screen of Tingle's phone, written as a question by the kid. In a eureka moment, Tingle decides in the future to pair up some clones with the actual folk and see how folks are doing, having emerged so unorthodoxly, perhaps so as not offend the Jewish neighborhood constabulary. Tingle tries to catch the son's attention. The kid gives his father a hug. Tingle stops, stimming just to hug his kid back, and begins talking to the teacher, again explaining about his innocent situation. At which point the teacher quietly interrupts Tingle's speech about having been sent back in time from his future self, as the text message still floats over everyone's heads, its delivery note reading, "How are we related? You look like someone I know. I thought maybe I'm seeing you again." Tingle stops talking mid-sentence. The father realizes something, a previously unrecognized skill the son is exhibiting. When he smiles and shows that his eyes aren't crossed, Tingle recognizes his son for the first time. The father suddenly calls the school therapist's office on his cell phone and sees how that backfires immediately when the therapist decides to cancel the therapy sessions of both the father and the son, going on vacation early in order to buy more 12-pack, and so forth. The father then invites himself to lunch, again apologizing for how little he actually knew about autism and just generally not making things better. And on the way out of the restaurant, where the father would finally convince his son to join him for a weekend getaway to a water park, an unidentifiable character appears in front of the son. Tingle gets anxious because this character doesn't look like what he planned he'd look like and had to finish his last beer just to calm himself down.
Okay. Alright, let's go take a shower. Go take a shower. Oh wait, I have to, sorry. I almost didn't stop this. Okay, see you.